Imagine this, just 4 days into an official Justice Department investigation, a top federal official writes a letter to one of the most powerful state attorneys general in the country, urging her to resign as an act of good faith. Then, days later, he shows up outside her home in a trench coat, posing for pictures like it's some kind of detective drama. That's exactly what happened in New York this month, when Ed Martin, the head of the Justice Department's new weaponization working group, called on Attorney General Letitia James to step down while investigating alleged mortgage discrepancies. This unusual move has sparked major questions about how federal investigations are being handled, what counts as professional conduct, and whether lines are being crossed when politics and law enforcement collide. So today we're breaking down the full story, the letters, the accusations, the reactions, and what it could all mean moving forward. Let's start with the basics. Ed Martin, who is currently serving as director of the Justice Department's weaponization working group, wasted no time after being appointed to his new role. Just 4 days into investigating New York Attorney General Letitia James, he sent her lawyer a letter urging her to resign. In his words, James could best serve the good of the state and nation by stepping aside. He added that her resignation would bring more peace than allowing the investigation to move forward. Now, government investigations can be intense, but it's highly unusual for an investigator to ask their subject to resign before any evidence has even been presented. That's part of why this story is attracting so much attention. It raises serious questions about whether this is about law enforcement or something else entirely. What made the situation even stranger was what happened next. Martin didn't just stop at sending a letter. A few days later, he appeared outside Letitia James' Brooklyn townhouse, wearing a trench coat and accompanied by an aide and journalists from the New York Post. He didn't knock on the door or meet with James directly. Instead, he reportedly told a neighbor that he was just looking at houses, interesting houses, calling James' residence an important house. According to security camera footage later shared by James' attorney, Martin even posed for a photo in front of the building. Critics called the appearance bizarre, staged, and inappropriate for a federal official leading a sensitive investigation. And when a Justice Department official shows up at a subject's home with media in tow, it's hard not to wonder if the act was more about publicity than procedure. James' lawyer, Abbe Lowell, responded strongly. In a letter back to Martin, Lowell criticized both the resignation request and the unannounced visit to James' home. He called Martin's conduct outside the bounds of Justice Department rules and ethics standards. Lowell pointed out that the DOJ has firm policies against using prosecutorial power to achieve political ends, and he argued that Martin's actions looked like exactly that. He described the visit as a made-for-media stunt, and even compared Martin's trenchcoat appearance to a tourist taking pictures at a landmark. Lowell's message was clear. Not only will James not be resigning, but her legal team sees Martin's approach as undermining the credibility of the Justice Department itself. To understand why this story is so charged, you have to know the background. Letitia James has been one of the most prominent state officials in the country to clash with former President Donald Trump. She has sued Trump and his administration dozens of times and, most notably, won a civil fraud judgment of over $450 million against Trump and his companies. That lawsuit alleged Trump inflated the value of his assets on financial statements given to banks. While Trump is appealing the decision, the case cemented James as one of his most vocal legal adversaries. So when the Justice Department, under Trump's influence, launches an investigation into James herself, it naturally raises eyebrows about whether this is part of a larger pattern of political retribution. The specific allegations against James come from the Federal Housing Finance Agency. Its director, William Pulte, sent a letter earlier this year claiming James may have falsified bank documents and property records. According to Pulte, James had listed a Virginia home as her primary residence, which could have allowed her to qualify for lower mortgage rates than those applied to second homes. He also suggested there were discrepancies in the paperwork regarding the number of apartments in her Brooklyn townhouse. Those allegations, while serious sounding, were largely based on media reports rather than confirmed evidence. That's important, because relying on media speculation to launch a federal investigation raises legitimate concerns about whether the case has been thoroughly vetted. James' lawyer, however, says the allegations don't hold up. Lowell explained that James' involvement with the Virginia property was minimal and related to a power of attorney form she signed while helping her niece purchase a home. That form mistakenly listed the house as James' primary residence, but Lowell pointed out that James sent an email to her mortgage broker at the same time explicitly stating the property would not be her main home. As for the Brooklyn townhouse, Lowell noted that James has consistently reported the number of units accurately in her building permits and mortgage documents. A certificate of occupancy from a previous owner had listed 5 units, but later city records confirmed the property actually has 4. In short, Lowell argues that the accusations don't amount to misconduct and are being exaggerated for political purposes. Meanwhile, the Justice Department's role here is raising as many questions as the allegations themselves. The Weaponization Working Group, which Martin leads, was created to investigate claims that law enforcement agencies are being misused for political purposes. Ironically, Lowell and others argue that Martin's actions are an example of exactly that, using federal power to target political opponents. On top of James, Martin is also reportedly investigating mortgage fraud allegations against Democratic Senator Adam Schiff. Schiff's lawyer has dismissed those claims as false, stale, and long debunked. The fact that the group's focus seems to be almost entirely on Trump's most vocal critics fuels the perception that this isn't just about justice. It's about politics. It's worth noting Martin's own background. Before leading the working group, he served as acting U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C., and he currently holds the position of U.S. Pardon Attorney. He also has a history as a Republican political operative, which adds another layer of complexity to his role. When a federal official with political ties takes such visible, dramatic steps against members of the opposing party, it naturally sparks debates about conflict of interest and professional conduct. The DOJ is supposed to operate independently of political pressures, but cases like this make it harder for the public to feel confident that independence is being maintained. What happens next is still unclear. The investigation into James' mortgage records is ongoing, though her legal team insists that the paperwork speaks for itself and disproves any wrongdoing. Martin, for his part, has not publicly commented beyond the letter and the highly publicized visit to James' home. The Justice Department itself has not issued a formal statement addressing concerns about Martin's actions. For now, both sides appear locked in a standoff, James refusing to resign and her lawyer pushing back hard against what they see as an improper investigation, while Martin moves forward with his probe. The outcome may depend not just on the facts of the mortgage case, but on how much political pressure surrounds it. This controversy also highlights a larger trend in American politics and law enforcement. In recent years, the line between legal accountability and political retaliation has become increasingly blurred. Investigations into public officials are nothing new, but when those investigations appear to target only one side of the political spectrum, they risk undermining public trust. Whether it's Democrats investigating Republicans or Republicans investigating Democrats, the perception of fairness matters just as much as the actual evidence. If people believe that prosecutors are acting like political players, it weakens confidence in the system as a whole. That's why stories like this resonate far beyond New York. They speak to how Americans view justice and fairness across the country. At the end of the day, Letitia James remains in office, continuing her work as New York's Attorney General. She has not publicly commented on the situation, likely letting her lawyer's forceful response speak for her. Ed Martin continues to lead his working group, with his actions being closely watched by both supporters and critics. And the Justice Department, an institution built on the idea of neutrality, finds itself under the microscope once again. Will this investigation uncover meaningful evidence, or will it be remembered as a headline-making political skirmish? Only time will tell, but one thing is clear. This case is already shaping the conversation about how justice and politics intersect in today's America. So here's the big takeaway. An investigation into a powerful state attorney general has now turned into a battle over ethics, accountability, and the perception of political influence inside the Justice Department. Between Ed Martin's resignation letter, his unusual visit to Letitia James' home, and the questions surrounding the mortgage allegations, this story is about more than just real estate paperwork. It's about how government power is used, how public officials are held accountable, and how fragile trust can be when politics enters the equation. As the investigation plays out, Americans will be watching closely, not just to see what happens to Letitia James, but to see what this moment says about the future of justice in the United States.